Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we'll be looking at another mod for Total War Warhammer 2, but this time very different. Normally I focus around quite lore-friendly mods, but this one is a complete and utter overhaul, which indeed is not in the lore, however is in the realm of possibility. This is the Amber Kingdom. The Amber Kingdom is a completely new way on how to play as an elven faction in Total War Warhammer, where the Wood Elves of the Southlands, known as the Bowmen of Orion, have been replaced by the Amber Kingdom, a Wood Elf faction dedicated to the Blood God Khorne. This is a complete and utter overhaul, and it's absolutely fantastic. You'll see new rights, new trees, new buildings, units, and so much more. This seems to be the modder's interpretation of how the Wood Elves would look and feel should they have fallen to the Blood God Khorne. Now, before we begin, there are a few things you need to know. The mod itself is still very much a work in progress. Indeed, it is incredibly playable at the moment, but there are a few things which still have placeholder stuff, for example skills and some other mechanics. However, as stated before, you can easily play through a campaign without any problem. And lastly, to better showcase this mod, I will be starting a fresh campaign in easy mode and easy battles, just so I can show off any specifics about it. So here we are in a fresh new campaign, and you'll notice a rather stunning looking UI, and a bunch of new mechanics. Amber Blood itself acts in a very similar way to Skaven Food, where the more Amber Blood you have, the more benefits you'll acquire. But if you start going into a deficiency, get prepared for some problems. Amber also returns in its normal form, and I know that might put people off, but don't you worry, there are other ways of acquiring Amber throughout the mod, such as through random events and so on, so it's not like you're tied to owning areas and making alliances with random races. That being said, you'll want to build up a small kingdom, trust me. Slavery also returns, but we don't really need to explain that mechanic if you're used to it with the Dark Elves. Now, as you can see, we're already on the page for the Legendary Lord. This is Celebron. Yeah, I know, not very inspired of a name, but then again, the character itself is extremely well done. A fairly powerful stat line with a bunch of unique skills, all of them which are tied to the race in general. The Legendary Lord is extremely well fleshed out, and really every single Lord and hero character I encountered from this race is well done in all honesty. My only complaint is the fact that the Lore of Beasts is the main lore for this race. I would have gone for something custom, but you never know what the creator might have up his sleeve. And interestingly enough, no unique items for this character as far as I've seen, but then again it's strong enough to not really need any. Construction-wise, this race and faction also has a complete overhaul in regards to buildings, well, and units too, where it seems that everything has been done in a unique sense. This means that whilst this is technically a Wood Elf faction, it's so completely different, it will indeed give you a completely different playthrough. The race itself also has a bunch of different landmarks too, which are littered across the Warhammer fantasy world. While in truth, the core of the Wood Elves stays very much the same, with a large majority of the baseline units being very much the same, just being reskinned, and your focus around range heavy armies also staying the same, you're getting a bunch of new different units, even including orc slaves, which are going to drastically change up your playstyle. At first glance, your research tree might look very much the same to the standard Wood Elf one, and in truth it looks like the inspiration is directly lifted from it. But as you'll notice, it's a lot larger, and as you progress further and further into the research tree, it seems there is a bit more Khornite influence. Further down the tree itself, there's a bunch of placeholder technologies, which as I stated before, is stuff you should expect, but then again, the tree itself is so fleshed out, you don't really notice the ones that are missing in all honesty, but don't let that deter you from trying out this mod. While it might not be fully complete, it's still very fun. Wood Elf officers return once again in its new form, the Blood Council. It works exactly the same way as expected. Once again, when you have a hero which is a certain level, you can place it on a council spot, where this spot will give you a variety of different bonuses, either faction specific or army specific. Next we have the Scarlet Cult, a mechanic centered around building of items, general buffs, and so on. Yes, this is taken directly from the Tomb Kings, and as you may have noticed, this faction and race seems to have a bunch of mechanics. And yeah, there might be a bit of bloat here, but in most cases these mechanics are rather minor and don't really affect your overall gameplay. So if you forget to use these mechanics here and there, that's perfectly fine. And lastly, their own take on the geomantic web. Perhaps a bit too much in terms of mechanics, but then again useful if you remember to use it. One thing you'll also want to take note of is that any other settlements you may capture which are not Wood Elven will act as normal settlements for you. You're not going to be stuck with the outpost system, which for me was a breath of fresh air and a sigh of relief. This race also has its own rights, which brings it in level with the races of Total War Warhammer 2. They are all fairly well balanced and fit across the theme of the Amber Kingdom. The main thing once again is that it might just be a bit too much bloat. You will get a bunch of different options when you defeat an army that is protecting a settlement. In most cases, barring the fact that you've got Deathwing from the World of Warcraft universe here, it's all pretty much standard. Annex is basically occupy, annex and enslave is loot and occupy, and everything else seems the same. The rather interesting one is establish Red Cloud Outpost. You see, the Red Cloud Orcs, those normally found around Clan Eshen's area, are pretty much stuck to your servitude, and you can use this to your advantage by also expanding their areas. Say for example, you've now taken over some territories which are mountainous terrain, which really doesn't benefit you whatsoever. If you don't want to deal with that, you can just simply give it to the Orcs. This also works well in higher difficulties if you want to build a defensive line of settlements that aren't your own. You may as well have your greenskin friends, or better yet said, slaves, taking the damage for you. There are a decent amount of new lords and heroes too. You have a new elven one, a new treekin one, and also a legendary lord which comes in the form of a bloodthirster. First, let's look at the Elder Amberbark. So you can see it's pretty much just a kitted out version of a treeman. However, it's more themed for its Amber Kingdom type of army. It's also very powerful in general, and it's got access to a few certain spells of the Lore of Beasts. This is your melee based monstrous lord. It's quite the target in all honesty, but then again, if it's something that large, it's also very powerful in melee combat, and its skills do show that tenfold. One thing to also notice is that this is a semi-horde, and it is your primary way on how to recruit tree spirits. It works rather well, but I'm not too sure how I feel about also having horde mechanics added into the bloat. Your elven generic lord is known as the Amber Lord, and once again is a completely new lord with skills, abilities, and so on, barring once again having the Lore of the Wild. This seems to be a rather popular lore for this faction. However, once again, it's done stupendously well, it's fairly well balanced, and it doesn't really lack anything. And lastly, the second legendary lord, which you can recruit from turn 1, the Emissary himself, a bloodthirster who seems to be needing some tune-ups to fix up, as there are a few placeholders, but stat-wise, it's incredibly overpowered. Then again, it is a bloodthirster after all, so it does need to be fairly powerful. The other, more generic bloodthirsters, as yes, there are multiple ones in this mod, aren't as powerful. We're not going to go over the roster for this mod, because if we did, we're going to be here for at least an hour or so. A lot of units have been added or worked around for this mod, as you can see, with a bunch of infantry and other different types of units. Not only do you have your new fake wood elves in a certain sense, as they are now followers of Khorne, but you also have access to some beastmen, some orc units, and even some warriors of chaos. There is a lot of room for experimentation regarding your armies. You can field some beastmen, you can have a full orc army, or completely mix and match if you so wish. This is an interesting mod for this scenario, of course. This is perhaps one of the most densely packed rosters I've seen for a single faction-specific mod. All in all, the faction itself is very enjoyable. It's a completely new take on a possible scenario with the Wood Elves turning to Chaos. Yes, it's not completely lore-friendly, and I don't tend to cover mods which aren't, but this one was highly requested, and I can see why. It's a new campaign experience, and if you're waiting for the Wood Elves to drop, you might as well try stuff related around it. barring the fact that it does have an obvious mechanic bloat and the fact that the mod is not fully completed yet, as there is still a decent amount of placeholder stuff. The mod itself is actually very enjoyable. Prior to recording the footage for this video, I was playing for a fair few hours and I was having a lot of fun. This is something which I tend to try to expect from modders when they implement new factions. When it's not lore friendly, they might as well go full ham and create something completely special. Overall, I'd say this was an enjoyable playthrough, and the mod itself obviously shows a lot of promise here. I can't wait to see how this mod progresses in the future, especially if they're reworking stuff in regards to Wood Elves. If it's the case that the upcoming Wood Elf DLC might introduce a bunch of new mechanics and units, these could easily be translated back into this mod. As always, if you're interested in trying out the Amber Kingdom, you can find a direct link to the mod in the description below. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.